Hi, Lou Pulsfer here, and I'm going to talk about the number of game designs you should work on concurrently. That is, work on during the same period. Finishing games is really important. An aspiring designer's goal is to finish games, to complete games, whether they're published or not. Because one of the pitfalls that aspiring designers run into is they work on a game for a while and then they get tired of it and they switch to something else, and they work on that for a while and they get tired of it, they switch to something else, they never go back to the old games, so they end up with a litter of partly completed games. That's a bad idea. Having said that, I think games require a long time to get all the way to 100%, to full ripeness. There's an old saying, you can't gather 9 newly pregnant women together and get a baby in a month. And I think in the same way, you can't rush a game if you want to get it all the way to 100% of what it could be. Of course, many published games, maybe most published games nowadays, don't get that far. But you as a designer presumably want to get that far. If that's true, then if you're only waiting for your one game that you're working on to be finished, you're not making effective use of your time. So I usually tell aspiring game designers, if they're only working on one game, they're a dilettante. What's a dilettante? A person who cultivates an area of interest, such as the arts, without real commitment or knowledge. Now that's fine if you're designing as a hobbyist, but it's not fine if you want to be a commercial game designer. My goal is to have 15 of my prototypes played at least once each year by someone other than myself. At the same time, I sometimes let games lie fallow a very long time. For example, the 3rd edition of Britannia I worked on, spent many hours on it, and then for the last year and a half I've just let it sit and not even looked at it. Now, if you've never finished a game, then it's probably a good idea to finish something. If you think you can finish one by concentrating just on that one, go for it. A reason why I try to get beginners to modify existing tabletop games instead of starting from scratch is they can finish relatively quickly what they've started, because most of it's already done for them. The same is true for making a level for a video game. The video game's done, you're just making the level. And so you can get things finished relatively quickly. But when you go beyond that to making games from scratch, then you run into this question of how many should I work on concurrently, and as you can see, my answer is quite a few. Now, there are other advantages to working on many games. You won't necessarily have all the rules in your head. That's certainly true for me. So I have to rely on the written rules, which helps me find problems in the rules. So when people are playtesting a game, this is tabletop games in this case, and they ask me, what is such and such? If I'm not sure, I'll look in the rules and see where it is in the rules and see how it's expressed there and make sure I can actually find it. Because if I can't, if it's not done well, then I need to fix the rules. If I've let a game lie fallow, as I call it, for years, and it can be quite a bit more than the year and a half that I've let Britannia 3rd edition lie fallow, then reading the rules is almost like a blind test, because I don't remember the rules. I've got to rely on what's written down. Now that can be a big problem if you didn't make a full set of rules before you set the game aside. Of course, it's also true that when you come back to something after years away, you have a different perspective and you might solve problems that obstructed your progress before. So, working on a lot of games can have benefits. There's another practical matter here. Game design is not like novel writing. It seems that once somebody has succeeded as a novel, which has probably had 2 or 3 published, then every one they write is going to be published. It's not the same for games. Even very successful designers like Eleanor Moon don't have all of their games published. So the more games you finish, the less you're going to be subject to this limitation. If you only do one game and it's one of those that for whatever reasons doesn't deserve to get published or won't get published, then where are you? If you've worked on several, some may not succeed, others may succeed. But always remember the goal. The goal is to finish games. Don't use the need to work on many games as an excuse to not finish games. You could see the notion of working on just 1 or 2 games as a focus on finishing games, but it doesn't seem to work that way. And that's another reason why I suggest working on many games concurrently. But this is partly a matter of personality, of course. There are creative people in many fields who are sometimes reluctant to actually say that something is finished. They don't want to think of it as finished. Different strokes, different folks. Now, where I'm not effective is in marketing the games to publishers, because I've had games that were screwed up pretty well by publishers, and I don't want to see it happen. Also, I'm not very good at the hyperbole that's becoming the norm in pitching games to publishers. To me, it's a game, not a life-saving process. It's a creative project, not my baby. But newer publishers, small publishers especially, seem to expect my amazing baby, naive enthusiasm from designers. As far as I'm concerned, few, if any, unpublished games deserve that description of amazing. I'm more of just a facts ma'am sort of guy. Now, I think I had the same point of view 40 years ago, but who knows? Maybe it's just my age. Consider what kind of designer you want to be. Of course, what I haven't said is, I have so many ideas I can turn into games, I couldn't stand to do just one at a time. But not everybody is in that situation.